What are some weird substitute teacher stories that happened at your school? Story 1. The substitute who taught us a fake lesson. Our regular history teacher was out for the week, so we got a sub, an older guy with a calm voice and a serious demeanor. He walked in, wrote the moon landing was faked on the board, and said, "Today, I'm going to prove this to you." For the next hour, he presented evidence with newspaper clippings, old videos, and photos. He had us analyze shadows, camera angles, and government cover-ups. Some of us were completely convinced by the end of the class. Then, right before the bell rang, he erased the board and said, "Everything I just told you was complete nonsense. But it sounded believable, right? That's why you should never take information at face value. Question everything, verify sources, and think critically." To this day, that's the best lesson I ever learned in school. Story 2. The mysterious disappearing substitute. This one still creeps me out. We had a sub for science, a super chill older guy who told us crazy stories about working in labs. He mentioned something about a top-secret government project, but then he laughed and said, "Never mind. I've already said too much." The next day, our regular teacher was back. Someone asked about the sub and she looked confused. "I didn't have a sub yesterday. I was here." We thought she was messing with us, but she insisted. There was no record of any sub in the system. To this day, we have no idea who that guy was. Story 3. The substitute who was too good at his job. One time, we had a sub for our English class, and he was incredible. Super engaging, knew his stuff, and made Shakespeare actually fun. We all agreed he was better than our regular teacher. The next day, we told our real teacher how amazing the sub was, and she got so defensive. She kept saying, "Well, he's not licensed," or, "I doubt he covered the material properly." A few months later, we found out the sub was actually a college professor who was taking time off and subbing just for fun. No wonder he was good. Story 4. I had a sub once who refused to actually teach. He walked in, sat down, and said, "I'm here because your real teacher isn't. I'm not going to pretend I know what they were going to teach today, so do whatever." At first, we thought he was joking, but he just pulled out a book and started reading. People started chatting, throwing paper balls, and basically doing whatever they wanted. Some kids took advantage of it, but a weird thing happened. After a while, people actually started working on their assignments. It was like we wanted some structure. Before leaving, he said, "See? You don't always need someone forcing you to learn. You're capable of doing it yourselves." I still think about that guy. Story 5. The substitute who gave everyone 100%. This was in high school. Our math teacher was out, and the sub, a guy in his mid-30s who looked completely over it, walked in and said, "I have no idea what you're learning, and I'm not going to pretend I do. Just work on whatever you need to." At the end of class, he handed back a quiz we took the day before. Except he had given everyone 100%, even people who barely wrote anything. Someone asked why, and he just shrugged and said, "It's not like this affects me." Then he walked out and we never saw him again. Our real teacher was furious, but I kind of respected the guy. Story 6. The substitute who got lost. Our substitute for English, Ms. Carter, was new to the building and had a habit of checking her schedule on her phone every few minutes. It soon became clear that she wasn't entirely sure where she was supposed to be. Halfway through the day, during a literature discussion, the lights went out in her classroom. Confused murmurs spread among the students as she announced, "I think I might be in the wrong room." It turned out she had been given a mix-up in room assignments and spent a good hour wandering the halls, asking staff for directions and checking every classroom door. When she finally returned, breathless and apologetic, the class had to fill the time by reading aloud from the textbook. Despite the delay, the story of the lost sub became a running joke among us, and for weeks afterward, everyone wondered if any substitute ever truly knew where they were going. Story 7. The unofficial counselor. In my sophomore year, our English substitute, Mr. Ramirez, turned out to be far more than a stand-in teacher. Instead of launching into his prepared lesson on poetry analysis, he spent most of the class quietly asking if anyone wanted to talk about what was bothering them. One by one, students began sharing their personal problems, ranging from family issues to struggles with bullying. Even though he wasn't a licensed counselor, Mr. Ramirez listened with genuine care, offering advice that made sense and even jotting down notes on a notepad as if he were keeping track of a therapy session. By the end of the period, the classroom felt transformed. What was meant to be a lesson on sonnets turned into an impromptu support session. I still remember one classmate later telling me, "I never thought a sub could make you feel so understood." It wasn't a conventional day of learning, but it left a lasting impact on all of us. Story 8, The Pet in the Classroom. One substitute teacher, Mr. Morales, showed up with something unusual tucked under his arm. A small, clear container housing a pet snake. He claimed it was for biology, and that the creature would demonstrate how some reptiles regulate body temperature. At first, the students were visibly alarmed, and whispers of, "Is it venomous?" spread like wildfire. Instead of fueling the panic, Mr. Morales calmly set the container on a desk, explained the snake's fascinating habits, and answered every question with surprising knowledge and humor. By the end of the class, the snake had become the unexpected star of the lesson, and even the most frightened kids were asking if they could hold it, with proper supervision, of course. The pet story turned into a legendary "What did the sub bring?" tale that the class recounted for months. Story 9, The Crime Scene Skit That Got Too Real. When Mr. Ramirez walked into class wearing a vest labeled police, we knew this wasn't going to be a normal day. Instead of taking attendance, he wrote on the board, "A crime has occurred." Then he told us we were detectives assigned to solve it. Apparently, someone had stolen an item from the teacher's desk earlier that morning. He handed out fake witness statements, some vague, some contradicting. He even placed numbered evidence markers around the room. It was all part of a game, but it felt real. We broke into groups, analyzing clues and debating theories. Some of us were convinced we had the thief figured out. Then, in the middle of the lesson, the principal knocked on the door. Mr. Ramirez stepped outside, and when he came back, his whole demeanor had shifted. "We have to cut the activity short," he said, quickly gathering the case files. "Great work, detectives." We were confused until rumors spread that an actual theft had happened at school that morning. A student's wallet, phone, and keys had gone missing from their locker. Even creepier, some details in Mr. Ramirez's fake case lined up eerily well with the real one. Had he somehow known? Was it just a crazy coincidence? We never found out. Mr. Ramirez never subbed at our school again, and to this day, no one knows if we were just playing a game, or if we had been part of something much bigger without realizing it. Story 10, The Spark of a Rivalry. One day, Ms. Carter, our substitute for a social studies class, made a casually offhand remark about pizza, declaring pepperoni overrated. What seemed like a trivial comment ignited an all-day debate among two rival student cliques. Suddenly, the classroom became divided into Team Pineapple versus Team Pepperoni, and a few other factions, with chants, impromptu posters, and even planned pranks emerging throughout the day. When the regular teacher returned, the entire school was buzzing with the fallout. The rivalry wasn't formally resolved, but it became a piece of school lore that everyone remembered with a mix of amusement and exasperation. Story 11, The Vanishing Project. It was a chilly Tuesday morning in art class when our regular teacher's carefully planned sculpture project was left on full display. For weeks, every student had been pouring their heart into crafting a unique sculpture, from intricate clay models to collages made of recycled materials. When the substitute, Mr. Ellis, arrived, he was given a brief note with minimal instructions and a rundown of the day's schedule. Walking into the room, Mr. Ellis was immediately struck by the clutter of partially finished projects and heaps of completed work spread across the tables. In his attempt to clear the clutter and prepare the space for a new activity, he decided to tidy up the extra material. Unfortunately, in his haste and without fully understanding the significance of the sculptures, he began sorting through the piles and mistakenly tossed several of the completed projects into the recycling bin. It wasn't until the regular teacher returned later that the disaster was discovered. Students soon realized that parts of their weeks of hard work were missing. Panic set in as whispers filled the classroom, and a palpable sense of disbelief took over. Some students burst into tears while others demanded answers. An immediate search was launched, with a frantic scouring of the recycling area, nearby hallways, and even the janitorial closet, hoping to salvage what they could. The incident quickly escalated beyond a simple cleanup mishap. Administration was called in, and Mr. Ellis was questioned about his actions. Although a few sculptures were recovered from the recycling bin, several of the more delicate and personal projects were beyond repair. The error sparked heated debates among students, with many still recalling that day as the day of the vanishing projects. Even now, years later, the story lingers as a cautionary tale about how a seemingly small mistake can turn into a lasting memory in the school's lore.